I think you just always have to be on a good bike, whether in whatever series you go to. Look at someone like Tony reinventing himself by going to MotoAmerica just because he jumped onto the Yoshi bike. You know, I think I've really done the right thing, certainly for me in my life, but by staying inside Superbike and being on a good bike as opposed to jumping into MotoGP or maybe something that's, you know, it's not going to get a top 10.
Our featured guest on the podcast today, four-time World Superbike champ, Jonathan Rea. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. This one is presented by Competition Werkes. Competition Werkes, makers of awesome exhaust systems, fender eliminators, cool anodized foot pegs, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of their pipes on my Triumph Street Triple, and it sounds so sweet. And you can visit them at Competition Werkes. It's WERKES. WERKES.com today. So welcome, everyone, and welcome, Jason Pridmore. What's up, man?
How you doing, G-Dub? I'm doing good on this end, and it's funny you mentioned Competition Werkes. I was just saw some pictures today of PJ testing at Barber, and I know he's one of their riders, so that's a nice little hedgeway into our show today. But yeah, man, I'm all packed and ready to get on the road for our season opener.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. Feels like a long, long time since we've raced. I mean, this is podcast number 24, so we're 23 weeks in a row of doing this podcast. And we've had no MotoAmerica racing, so I'm pretty pumped about it for sure. How you feeling though? How's life? I know you're at the racetrack for a long time since we talked last.
I went out to Chuckwalla for what worked out to be 7 days. Really, I was out there. I actually rode a little bit. I did some one-on-ones on Wednesday and Thursday, and then they had the CVMA races on the weekend. There was some people out there still shaking down their bikes, getting ready for Atlanta, and I know a lot of them are on the road right now. So it was a great weekend. The weather was absolutely mint out there. I got to say a big thank you to Mike Pond from Tuned Racing. To be honest, we had an incident in our garage in the morning on Sunday. And it was the bike that Michael Gilbert was actually going to race. He was actually racing Caroline Olsen's 600, and she tipped off in morning warm-up. And so Michael was racing it in the shootout. And, man, Mike Pond and a couple of the other boys, just everybody jumped in to try to get that bike together. But it kind of reinforces the kind of family we got there as far as within their pits, at these races. Michael was able to go out and salvage second in the shootout and keep his points lead out there in CVMA. So, yeah, I know Mike's on the road right now, driving now to Atlanta, so he probably won't hear this, but big thanks to that guy.
Awesome community. Well, you don't know. When this thing gets uploaded, maybe he will visit it. Also, Jay, I just want to mention Roger Hayden gave me a call, and he wanted me to mention the Nikki Hayden Memorial Foundation that's up on Facebook and on all social media. We're going to have more details about that in the coming weeks. We're going to talk to Roger Hayden on the podcast about the Nikki Hayden Memorial Foundation, doing great things for charities across the board. So check it out on Facebook and give it a like. And obviously, the more likes, the more power the foundation has. But Jason, getting off of all those topics, obviously MotoGP happened over the weekend, which is great, but we're going to talk about that later in the show because World Superbike Aragon's coming up. And in a few minutes, we're going to talk about what we can expect from that race. But before we do, what do you think about getting into our chat with four-time World Superbike champion Jonathan Rea? What do you think?
Yeah, well, when you did this last week, and he was so kind to come on, and we did the little tease, I purposely, as we've discussed, I don't like to listen to any of it prior, and so I've been dying to listen to some of the answers to some of the questions that you and I kind of jotted down. So I'm really keen to hear what he has to say, and then what a great show we got today with the MotoGP, but. Yeah, I think we talk about that afterward. Let's hear what Johnny has to say about his season so far and moving forward.
Yeah, so my first question to him, by the way, he is absolutely great guy. He spent a lot more time than I asked him to. Was just enjoying the conversation. But the first question I naturally ask, as I normally do, was, how's it going this year?
It's been very positive and also with negative attached to the season. We feel like we have a new ZX10RR this season, and which is it stemmed from especially the regulations being so penalizing towards us and dropping so many RPM. We came up with a bike that pretty much had lighter con rods and different valve system that we could just rev a little bit higher than what we had before. So we kind of got some improvements with that. We found improved acceleration. So generally things have moved forward for us. We got winter testing's been great. And, the first 2 rounds of the season's been, I've been second in all 6 races. So positive if you look at it from that side. But when you look at the nitty gritty, the black and white, and, how far I've finished off the race when it's too far, we're too far behind right now. And, both Alvaro and Ducati have, they've moved the game along. And so, yeah, just the nature of the tracks in Phillip Island and also in Thailand, it really didn't go in our favor. But I feel good with the tracks coming up that we should be able to respond. And it's a long old season. But generally, the atmosphere inside the team's good, and I'm enjoying riding the bike. I certainly feel like more of a bond with this bike than the ones in the past. So yeah, step by step.
Jason, I'm going to lob this over to you. What do you think?
Well, I think, to be honest, he's taken the high road because as a competitor, you always want to win. And I think that it doesn't do him any good really to come out and complain about things. I think that there's a lot of people out there doing it for him already. I think that there's a lot of people looking at things, and really the dynamics of the thoughts of people after the first race to the second race really started to change, where people started to understand that it's not just the guys on the seats. Yes, they're both amazing, but one right now has a weapon underneath him. And Jonathan's done his best to maintain all those second places. And I think that he kind of feels like that's where he's going to be for those first 2. I do believe Aragon's going to still be another tough one. But when they go to that next race in Assen, that might be a race where things can change. Because not only do I think Jonathan will obviously be extremely competitive, but I think that you're going to bring in the Vandermarks, the Alex Lowe's, Melandris. Those guys, I think, will also be able to maybe keep up with that Ducati a little bit easier at a track like Assen. So I really do believe that it depends on the tracks. But I like his answer. He's not bitching and moaning or whining. He's just getting on with the job. He's happy with his team and his bike, and that's all he can do right now. He's doing the best he can.
Yeah. Now, look, we know that Ducati, especially Alvaro Bautista, has dominated, especially on speed, and that Dorna reserves the right to make some changes after like the third race. Meaning, could they open up the Cowie a little bit? Could they start limiting the Ducati? And that kind of led me to wondering if Jonathan and his team keep one eye outside of the garage, you know what I mean, on the rules, or if they stay focused on their program moving forward.
No, 100% focused on ourselves. I mean, we can't worry about what the regulations are going to do. In the past years, Superbike has made a huge step in trying to balance performance. I don't know if that's positive or negative because, I've been a part of this championship now since 2008, really, and I've gone through different promoters, different organizers, different technical directors. So it's just different, and now there's different regulations. Manufacturers are responding, and then by making different production-based bikes. But then what happen is now, in the previous years, Dorna have balanced the rules by either giving concession parts or dropping of RPMs. But yeah, we can't really worry about that. Just focus. There's a few areas where we need to really concentrate on. I'd like to be a little bit better at the end of races. I seem like I'm really, really hammering my front tire. In the past, since the evolution of the Pirellis, now the consistency of the front and the rear is pretty good. But just how I'm riding right now, it's at the end of the races, we're running out of stability a little bit. So I can't be on that limit for, say, all 20 laps. So that's an area we need to improve a little bit. And with anything, we're constantly trying to find the perfect setup. That's part of the challenge in road racing, and constantly evolving.
I mean, can you imagine being able to ride a bike at 100% for the full race distance? I mean, there's been times in other series when it's possible. I think towards the end of Bridgestone's reign in MotoGP, you could do the fastest lap of the race when the fuel load was low and the tires were still in good condition at the end of the race. But yeah, I don't know. I mean,
okay, but what you're saying, Greg, you got to look at it like this. Okay, when you have two guys on the exact same bikes and they're pushing each other to 100%, that is, we've seen that in the past, as you have said. But when you have somebody that is, let's just say 0.3 to 0.4 to a half second faster a lap, and you're already pushing at 100%, Jonathan's going over 100%. He's taking a lot bigger risks the first 5, 6, 7 laps, just trying to be there at the beginning, to not just let Alvaro walk away and let him do his own thing. He's trying to hound him and do what he can. I mean, I always use the term, you got to rough guys up a little bit. These guys, the announcers made such a big deal about Jonathan going back underneath Batista in turn 3 at Thailand. It was nothing. Like, honestly, it was nothing. He was already past him, and Batista just chose to keep leaning in. And all he had to do is stand the bike upright and let Jonathan go. He's going to go past him down the next straightaway anyways. So the thing that you got to remember is that when you get to a track like Assen and you get to some of these other places there's a lot more turns, there's a lot more places that he's going to be close enough to do things. But when you even talk about look at our racing here in MotoAmerica, you're going to have next weekend, there's going to be 7 bikes, let's just say 8 bikes maybe in the lead first, maybe 10 laps, Greg? You're going to see a bunch of bikes up front. Then you're probably going to get down to 2 or 3. It's not that they're riding any harder or any easier, but the competition right now is it's going to be so close where there's not going to be somebody with just a huge marketable advantage. Like, I'm not going to say that Cameron's going to go run off by 10 seconds or Tony's going to run off by 10 seconds. I mean, would you think so?
No, not
so.
No way.
So the problem is that in my opinion as a rider is that at the beginning of the races, Johnny's got and Alex Lowe's and Van der Mark and all these other guys, they have to ride so hard just to try to hound him a little bit, to kind of rough him up. Like, the best thing that could happen is that Batista gets a horrible start and gets behind 4 or 5 of them, because the second that he passes that person is going to try to go right back by him and attack and just try to hound him. If he gets a good start like he did in the second full race at Thailand, it's curtains for everybody. And I think with the short run to turn 1 at Aragon, there's going to be a lot of people a lot closer to Batista through the first, say, 3/4 of that lap until they get to the back straight. And Batista's just got to kind of keep his feet clean. And I think he's going to be able to go by a couple of them down that big straight. And if he leads down that back straight, I think it's going to be really hard for the rest of them.
Yeah, it kind of reminds you of the old Valentino Rossi and the corkscrew move. You got to just keep being aggressive and try to get in front of that guy, because if you let Bautista get his rhythm, right now it's curtains. So I know they don't have the data and all that kind of stuff, and there's that little outside hope that maybe they're going to show up and the thing's not going to turn well or not do something right. But we're only 2 races into the season, and I'm not crowning the champion yet. But
No.
You're sitting there going like, wow, what's the answer? Is the answer in Kawasaki's stable, or is the answer in the rules that Dorna's going to provide? That was kind of like the basis of that question. You know what I mean? Is to say all that stuff. And, with that in mind, I was thinking about that new, what do you British people call it? The ZX10. That's right. The ZX10R. Yeah. When I asked him about the ZX10RR, I wanted to know his thoughts on what his motorcycle does really well. And I said, look, if you can just pick one thing that is the absolute best characteristic of your bike right now, what is it?
It's tough, if we had to pick one thing I think we'd do better than all our rivals is our chassis is super stable, especially in the front of the bike. So that enables us to really hold the bike up in that last part of the braking. From a general side, I feel like overall our package is one of the best on the grid, because it's a confidence-inspiring bike. You jump on it and you feel good. You feel like you can really push the limit. It does a lot of things better than other bikes. There's some areas where, for example, in the last seasons, we've always been just about there on speed with our rivals, or just behind. And this year, we're with the new Ducati, and certainly with Alvaro on it, who's probably a good few kilos lighter than me, we're really suffering in the sort of that acceleration and top speed. So that's an area, unfortunately, you can't just wave a magic wand and find 20 horsepower. But right now, compared to our nearest rivals, that's where we need to improve.
But Jason, it's not just the top speed, is it? It's really acceleration getting to that top speed, don't you think? Or is it just top speed?
It's hard to say. I think it's a little bit of both, because we haven't really got to see. I mean, the acceleration of the Ducati obviously is tremendous. It got the start at the second race and just walked away. So the acceleration is good. But I agree, it's kind of all the way through. When you hear him talking about how great his bike is and the chassis and getting into corners, and you hear people saying, "Oh, Bautista just can't get into the corners as hard." It's the same thing that we talked about last week. When you've got an extra 10 or 12K of mile an hour that you have to, or kilometers that you have to slow down, it's going to cause you to probably brake a little bit earlier. And if Johnny's bike is that good under braking, he's taking it as far into it as he possibly can for the speed that he is going. But I would definitely say, Greg, that it's a combination of both. I think that the Ducati's probably got more acceleration for sure. I don't feel like we've had to really see Alvaro really have to come off the corners hard enough yet to be pushed. That's why I think that Aston will be a little bit more test, and he might win. He's every chance that he could win there. He's been there a million times, and they're going to continue to get that bike better. But I don't think that you would see at a place like Assen the things that you saw at the first 2 rounds. And of course, we got Aragon this week. It'll be interesting to see how these guys kind of roll with them through the first half to 3/4 of this track. And then we might start to see a little bit more of what the Ducati can really do under acceleration, because a lot of what he's done so far is just carried a little bit more roll speed, not have to be hard on the tires from midpoint of the turn out. He's rolled through them nicely and then been able to take advantage of what Ducati's given him. And I think when you hear what Johnny said too at the beginning, Ducati has just raised the level. That's what they've done. They've built an incredible machine, and they've put somebody on it really good. And it'd be interesting to see. I know they've tested at Aragon. What was it, a week or 2 ago, Greg? We saw they were testing there, and Chaz was
just over a week. Yeah,
we'll be interested to see if Chaz gets a little bit closer. It's a track he really likes, and he's even
really well there.
He does really well there, but there's a huge size difference between him and Alvaro as well. So, we'll I think a lot of things will really come into play the next 2 rounds, and we'll see really the advantages or disadvantages of each bike. But I think until we go to a track where top speed isn't such a factor as it was the first 2, then we'll see how close the bikes are chassis-wise with each other.
All right. Let's get into the question you wanted me to ask Jonathan Rea. It revolves around the debate of how important it is to have not only a great motorcycle underneath you, but equally, or sometimes even more importantly, you got to have the team around you. So, just how much impact that can have on the season and on your career.
It's, I'm 100% in favor of building a team around me. It's so tough because I don't feel you can just turn up on any bike and any team and win, because I feel like, good riders can, to ride a bike at 90% for most, world-class athletes or motorcycle riders is pretty easy. Finding that last percent is that's the really tough part, and you can only do that by confidence. So having really good guys around you in your corner really helps, because you go out there, and at the beginning they started off as my hobby. I loved it. All I wanted to do was race. First it was motocross, and then now it's road race, and then I wanted to get paid to do it. I want it to be my job, but they don't pay me to go out there and because I'm a nice guy, or they want me on their team. There's a massive pressure around it. So if you've got a crew that kind of gets that, and you can kind of have fun along the way, but it's serious when it needs to be serious. But also I like to enjoy myself for the guys, and not that this could ever happen, and I wouldn't want to tell Kawasaki this, but I'm 100% sure that if they came and they say, hey, listen, we can't support this project anymore, we don't have the budget, all the guys are going to have to work for free next year, I'm almost sure all my guys would turn up for me, and that's huge. And I've never had it until I joined this the Kawasaki race team, and all my crew have been with me from that first year, and it's nice. They understand what I want from the bike, they understand all the my little intricacies, and things that little pet hates. I'm sure I annoy them at doing some things, but we're definitely more than a team. We're probably more like a family.
Speaks volumes, doesn't it, Jason?
Oh, you have no idea. Like, think about how close your family is to you, and then imagine going to the racetrack and having a whole nother group of guys like that. And that's what he has. He's got, I was so lucky to get to ride Jonathan's bike like 4 years ago at Aragon, where he's going to be. And unfortunately he wasn't there, which was a shame. But I think he was becoming a dad for the second time.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thing is that I got there and all of his crew were just so happy all the time. Pire and all the boys were happy. Everybody was stoked to be there. Everybody was happy to be doing their job. And I thought, if this is the way it is for him each weekend, and you know what, Greg, it's really easy to do that when you're winning. But I've seen him finish second, third, or further back. And first thing Pire does always comes up, gives him a big hug. And, you could tell that it's okay. We'll figure this out. We'll fight back. Even in his interviews, when he would say whether he won or finished second, he would say, I've got to figure out something better for tomorrow. He's always trying to sort it. What a great group of guys he's got around him to do that.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the answer too. It just I'm like, wow, how many racers do we know that have been in that position? And I thought it was a really honest way to answer the question. Saying, shouldn't tell Kawasaki this, and I thought that was really good.
That's
all right,
exactly
Jay.
right.
So next up though is the big one. Okay,
I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, you and I talk about this all the time. How people like to compare World Superbike racers to MotoGP racers, who's better, and all that stuff. And I gave you a preview last week, but in this one, I ran the whole thing, and it's well over 3 minutes. But I'm really looking forward to what you think of what Jonathan's getting ready to say right here. So here it is, his take on people comparing World Superbike racers to MotoGP racers.
Oh man, I get into so much trouble talking about this, or certainly make headlines in Europe. But it's tough. You can never have a debate about World Superbike versus MotoGP because it's completely different. It's I've been there and I got on a good bike at the time, turned up and 2 wild cards, and I had a seventh and an eighth. Right now, if somebody did that, they'd talk about it for ages. You'd certainly get signed up. But it's all about opportunity. What the sad thing for Superbike guys, or say, for example, MotoAmerica guys, or even British Superbike Championship guys, there's the level of rider in a lot of championships is super, super high, but they might not ever get the opportunity to show that full potential. The sad thing for Superbike guys going to MotoGP is they never turn up on factory equipment. I think, even when Ben went there all them years ago, he went on the Tech 3 bike. It wasn't in a fully factory team. Or, Cal was the same. And it's really tough. It's now the MotoGP guys. You don't even have to be a top MotoGP guy, but they come to World Superbike and they step into one of the best rides, certainly a manufacturer supported ride. And it's, I feel really blessed and lucky because I found a great team that let me sort of realize my potential. But I go motocross with guys that are 10 times more talented than me, but they never get the opportunity. I know I race against guys with amazing talent, but even inside the Superbike class, but they don't have the machinery to be at the front week in, week out. And it's, I'm not naive enough to think that just because I've got the last few World Championships that there's not equally as good or even better riders in that grid that don't have that. So you can't just turn around and say, yeah, this guy's amazing. Certainly if we talk about what Bautista's done is incredible, for a rookie to come in, but you can't just turn around and be like, he's so much better than everybody else on the grid, because you don't know everybody else's story on the grid. And so it's a tough topic, and it's the same for, in MotoGP. I'm sure, 2 or 3 riders from Superbike go there on the right machinery. They're going to be, top 5 guys. But what happens when a GP rider comes and doesn't jump on the right bike and isn't setting the world on fire? So it's one of them. You really need, as a rider, like we just spoke about with that crew around you, you need everything in place to win races, no matter what championship you're in. So it's luckily I've had the hot seat for the last 4 years for sure, and I know what it takes that you need everything right, but not naive enough to think that everyone's on a level playing field and it's the best guy that always wins. We always try and make it that way, but there's so many guys that, like I said, that don't have that opportunity, that are maybe just on a satellite team or whatnot and can't quite get there.
Couple things that I take away from that. Number one, how little ego he has about his racing. Number two, the fact that he's struggling with the answer. Like after listening to that 3+ minutes, Jason, just sum it up for us. What's he really trying to say?
Well, the first thing you got to think about, Greg, is when he talks about comparing himself to other riders and getting himself in trouble, he's just being honest. I mean, if you're going to ask the guy a question and he gives you an honest answer and it causes controversy, I don't think he does that on purpose. I think it's, as a rider, you have to have self-belief in knowing that you can do well. When he came and did it in, I think, 12 or 13, you have to remember back then, too, the amount of rides that were available weren't that great. There was CRT bikes, I think, back then as well, wasn't there? Am I going back far enough, Greg? But even
I
up
think
7, 8, 9 years ago, like if he wasn't going to get a proper seat, and at the time he's riding for Honda Tenkate in World Superbike, which incidentally wasn't the best bike to be on then. So when he says that he's fortunate now to be on the best bike, he paid his dues by being on other teams without bikes that maybe were the best then. And when you ask the questions, what's going to happen when a top level MotoGP guy comes and gets on a motorcycle that doesn't have the kind of team around him that he does, and doesn't have the kind of equipment underneath him that he does. In other words, if you get a MotoGP guy that comes over that doesn't have the best stuff, then it'll be interested to see where they finish. Well, sadly, that was the case with Nicky. Nicky went over to World Superbike, and because you're a tremendous rider, if you don't have the other stuff around you, you're not going to do very well. It just is one of those things. You're not. And I think if you brought a guy over and you put him on Johnny's bike from MotoGP, yeah, he's going to rip, or even the Yamahas. But I'll tell you, if Bautista had come in and done what he's done so far, won 6 races in a row, and done it on a Yamaha or even a Cowie, there's a lot of things then that might be getting thrown around. But right now, he looks like he's got a bike does have a little bit of an advantage. And that's, anybody that would think anything different than that isn't being true to themselves.
Oh, we know from the RPM limits, he's got an advantage on RPM alone. So, yeah.
You just look at top speed. If you'd have said to Johnny right now, a good question to ask him is much stability as he has in the front end of that bike and how great it is. If you said to him, tell you what, we're going to take a little bit of the stability away from the front. We're going to give you 11K to run with this guy down the straightaways. What do you think he'd say?
He'd take the 11K.
Give me the 11, 12K down the straights, and I'll figure out how to make the brakes work, even if they're not great. But at least then I'll have a chance to do something with them when I get to the end of the straightaway. And that's it. And it is no knock on Ducati. It is no knock on Bautista. That's the reality. So I love how he answered that question. And I love how he answered the question before. People have heard me rabbit on about it enough. It's a total package, and you cannot compare the two. You literally cannot compare. You cannot compare MotoGP to World Superbike because they're two different levels of playing fields as far as equipment and technology. You can't compare them.
All right, Jason, let's go ahead and shift gears then, and let's move on to what's coming up this weekend, Aragon. And I wanted to lead this conversation as to what we can expect in the third World Superbike round of this year by letting Jonathan Rea explain what he thinks.
A tough fight again, a tough fight to certainly win the races. I feel like we just need to try and improve that gap to the front. Aragon's got another super long straight where we've been struggling in the past 2 races, but it does have quite a lot of twisty sections. The last 2 years it was one of Chaz Davis's strongest tracks. In the last few years, I've managed to steal a win or 2 off him, but that was all because the first few sectors of the lap, the Kawasaki really makes the lap time, and you could really, when I watch them races back, I've just been watching them back from last year this week, and you could really see where the different bikes were making gains at different parts of the track. So we have to see, I just think I heard yesterday they've been testing there. So certainly free practice 1, we'll see a real gauge of where we are, and then just work through the weekend. But try to have no expectations, because I don't want to at this point of the season start letting my head drop, because I know it's I've been in this position before where it's a very long season and the season hasn't started out exactly as you planned, or I started off the season with a huge points tally and manage. So it's kind of just trying to manage expectations. And by not having any expectations, then we can just always try and move forward.
All right, Jay, I'm going to give you a little life lesson here, okay? The
Yeah,
life lesson, the life lesson is very simple. All right. The root of all upset. Every upset, every time you get upset, not you personally, but everybody out there, every time you get upset about something, the root of all that is expectation. You have a thwarted expectation, you get upset. If you can go into anything in life without an expectation, then there's nothing to be upset about. You just kind of get what you get. So I understand what Jonathan and his team's strategy is at this point. Let's just go see what we have, not like hold on to, oh, we're down on this, we don't have this, blah, blah, blah. But hey, here are the strong parts of my bike. Yeah, we got a long straightaway, but we're going to see what happens, and this is where the bike's the strongest. I love that attitude, and I love the series, and I'm going to be looking forward to watching those results come out if we can. I mean, I know we're going to be very busy this weekend, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. So that's just my take on it. What about you?
All right, let me give you my take. My take is exactly what I just got done saying. He knows the same exact things that I do. If you listen to him, the first half of the track, the first 2 sectors or 2.5, 3 sectors, he's going to be competitive. He's going to be able to stay with Batista. It's going to be, and then you heard him say, Aragon has another long straight. What does that mean? That's where we've struggled in the past. Well, it ain't going to get any better as we've seen this year. So when he says that they're having a bit of a struggle, they want to close the gap down to the front, that's Jonathan being optimistic. That's Jonathan probably sick and tired of listening to people bitch about him giving an honest answer about things. You could talk to Alex Lowe's or any of the other guys about this as well. They're all taking the high road. They're all of them. I mean, literally, I've talked to Alex a bit. He's not come out and said anything like derogatory about the Ducati having this or Ducati having that, because everybody else is doing it. So I love the answer myself as well. He's literally wanting to be the best he can for himself and the team, because you can't go into a weekend already pissed off and down or defeated. You can't. You got to keep the spirits up. You got to keep performing, get the most out of your bike, get the best out of yourself. And really, at the end of the day, if you can look in the mirror and say, I rode as hard as I could, the best I could for as many laps as I did, that's as good as I can do. Now, I do think in the sprint race, the Super Bowl sprint race, that I think that they could get a little bit closer, only because I think that if they can get around him, if they can get in and around Batista for the first 5 laps, especially through those first 2 or 3 sectors, you might be able to see something a little bit different for that race. But I honestly see the same thing happening again at this track that we did the first 2, because of the length of the front straight or the back straightaway there. It's so long, and the longer the straightaway, the more K that they're going to gain on the other bikes right now. So, and it'd be great to see Chaz get up there and start doing well on this bike also, so that people will maybe start to believe that, okay, you know what, maybe the bike has something. I think Chaz he's healthy, but he's got a new crew chief or whole new side of the garage, I believe, on his side. And he just didn't get to test as much as everybody else. So that test at Aragon might have been a great thing for him. But yeah, what a pleasure having Jonathan on the podcast with us. Greg, you did a great job interviewing him.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, he's really generous with his time, and the door's open to him. He knows that. We talked about it. Anytime he wants to come back and talk on the podcast, and he's like, I definitely want to do that. So it'll be fun talking with him. I'm sure at least I might bring a recorder with me to World Superbike when they come to WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca later on in the season, and we'll get to chat him up at least there again. So,
no, that's great, and that'll be another track where, when you look at it, that will be another track where things might be a little bit closer. Laguna's not known for big fast straightaways and things, but I'll tell you where was a big fast straightaway, Greg, was this week we got to experience round 2 of MotoGP and in Argentina, and just getting a quick little rundown of the results in MotoGP itself. Every now and then, maybe he just does this to give us a little reminder, but Marc Marquez just walked off in front of everybody. It says 10 seconds, 9.8 seconds, but really it was closer to 15 or 18. I think he danced the last 9 seconds of his lap across the line. He was so far gone in such the class of the field this weekend, but Marquez rolls on. Valentino Rossi just crazy how good that guy is. Finishes second, just 40 years old. I know everybody talks about his age. I just don't think it matters. I think his motivation level is there. We can see some distinct advantage and disadvantages on that bike. But then we got Dovey third. Great job for him, salvaging a podium. Jack Miller, brilliant fourth. Rins fifth. Petrucci sixth, but close in that group. Nakagami, Quartararo, unbelievable again. Finishes eighth, 20 seconds off. But when you really look at it, he was only 11 seconds out of second place. And what was really like his first Grand Prix, because let's not forget, he stalled on the line. And then we had the Espargaro brothers finishing 9th and 10th. So Aprilia 9th, Paul Espargaro 10th. What was your takeaway from the weekend of MotoGP?
Everyone knew from free practice one that Marquez was just going to dominate the weekend. So it seemed to me like the mindset became, okay, what are we going to do for second place? And I'm not saying people gave up, but I mean, everybody knew it. Even Michelin knew it. They were talking about that. So when he got the whole shot and started to check out, even Enrique Sierra, who's the director of MotoGP for that race, knew what to focus on. So my takeaway was Rossi is unreal. I mean, he's just unreal. And Jason, I'm going to tell you something. You watch on MotoGP.com, and I watched the last 10 laps of that race on board on Dovizioso.
Oh, how cool.
The whole thing. And it was, I don't know how to put it, dude. Like, when you're watching races and you have the commentators and they're just blah, 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 and they're chucking off stats and they're doing whatever, and you have the noise and you have the crowd and everything else. When I watched that race on board, I just watched. Most of the time, they had it just facing out the back. And so I was just watching Rossi ride, just taking it all in, watching his brake hand, watching when he gets on the throttle, lifting the bike up. And it really reminded me of the tranquility, I guess you could say, of racing. Meaning, Jason, I think you can get this. When you race it and then you watch it on TV, it's such a different experience. I mean, you're in your helmet. Me, I wore earplugs. You didn't. So you got to experience more noise. But it's just different when you're on the bike. It's like it's your alone time. It's just time to go to work and just enjoy it. And that's really what that experience gave me. And watching where the Ducati was strong and where the Yamaha was strong, I thought that where Rossi was going to attack Dovizioso was exactly where he was going to attack him. I just didn't realize that Rossi could pull such a gap in a couple of corners like he did. So like you're saying, okay, on paper, 9.8 seconds to margin, but Marquez was just in another world. And the problem is that going to where we're going next for MotoGP, it's not going to be much different. Yeah. So really, if you look at it, if Marquez was just not in the frame, in the picture, you get pretty tight, right? So you have Rossi, Dovizioso is right behind. Yeah. Less than 2 seconds adrift then is Miller, who had a great race. Then a couple tenths is Rins and all that stuff. So I think it's hard for people to bellyache about the horsepower of the Ducati because Honda really seems to have a weapon, an absolute weapon, because they do have motor. Plus, Marquez can get that bike turned really, really well. The one thing I will say is crazy to not know what was going on with Jorge Lorenzo at the start of that race when he started drifting backwards and got eaten alive. Later, it came out that he had actually hit the pit lane speed limiter button.
Yeah,
and he activated that instead, and so that would explain all of that away. But I think he was a disappointment right off the start. But he did claw his way back up to 12th, just ahead of Cal Crutchlow, who obviously had a ride-through penalty, which we'll talk about later. So,
Greg, as you know, I'm in like this little MotoGP pool and all that stuff. My team sucks, by the way. So, and Lorenzo was so cheap, I picked him again for the second year in a row. So again, I'm the laughing stock. And of course, because I'm writing that I've got a 4-time world champion that can't start a motorcycle. He really finished 14th because when you look at the race and how it panned out on the last lap with Morbidelli, who was running an excellent race. I mean, when you look at that gap that you were talking about, Greg, you had Rossi, Dovey, Miller, Rins, Petrucci, and then you can't forget we did have Vinales and Morbidelli in that battle with Petrucci. So you really did have 7 guys all kind of battling for second, all within, they were all kind of in a row. And then it looked like Morbidelli just got into what I think they'd call it turn 6 there. It looked like he just got in there a little bit too deep. He said he kind of got a little bit of a double slipstream through the fast left prior, and got in there and just literally touched the back of Vinales and knocked them both out. Now, throughout history in this championship, you always see guys that are going to have some no point races. And I'm sure that, Vinales now, he's got that no point after, again, qualifying on the front row and not really showing again, was he? He never really showed himself in the race. He just kind of went backwards, sat back there in 6th, 7th, 8th. So what you say about Rossi is really remarkable, because he's just able to get that Yamaha to he's still the guy, isn't he? I mean, he still seems like the guy when it comes to racing. But then Vinales all of a sudden will just pop off and go win a Grand Prix, where Rossi hasn't been able to do that as such yet. But boy, to see Morbidelli, who I really do rate, and to see him make that big of a mistake, maybe it was a little mistake, but it turned out to be a big problem for both. But yeah, you're right about the Rossi thing and watching him ride.
Now, here's the thing about Rossi. Let's talk about Rossi Vinales for just a moment. The interesting thing is that post-race, Rossi said, we got it right this weekend from free practice number 1. We went with the medium tire. We chose the right tire. We chose the right settings throughout the weekend. And there's the end result. Now, I know that we talk a lot about Rossi showing up on race day and, going like, wow, how did he do what he did, and then meaning like he wasn't there in FP1, he wasn't really there in FP2, whatever. And then all of a sudden he's in podium contention in a race.
Mm-hmm.
This actually reminds me, Jason, of you back in 1997 or 98. I think it was 97. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
In 750 Supersport, I remember being around you then because I was racing as well. And I remember there would be times when you weren't like number 1 in the session, that you were struggling a little bit. And Carl Steyer, your suspension guy, would go out and watch that last session. And all of a sudden it would be click, click, click. And then boom, you'd go out, check out, win the race by, a handful of seconds or more. And I've always been of the mindset that it's critical to try to get up to speed quickly, because as you gain speed, you can start to uncover things that are wrong with the motorcycle. And I think this weekend, what you saw is a Valentino Rossi who got it right from the beginning and was able to comfortably, like watching that onboard, he never looked like he was in a bit of stress. He did make one mistake when he passed Ovi early on into, I think it was turn 1, where he ran wide, got the braking wrong. And post-race, he said, in order for me to make that pass, I had to be within centimeters of where I needed to brake the most to get by him. Mm-hmm. So, and he also mentioned that heading to Austin, the person interviewing him said, like, if you have a chance, do you have a chance? Because Marquez, he's never lost there since we've been there. And he said, we've got to do the same thing. If we're going to even be close, we've got to get it right from free practice number 1. And so I think, in terms of the Yamahas, you saw the domination of Valentino Rossi because they got it right in FP1, where Vinales just never really seemed to just be comfortable. We talked about it before. It's like, okay, he can do one lap fast, but can he race? I don't know. And I don't want to pull the plug on him because I'm a big fan, but
no. And he qualified second and he was on pole at Qatar at Doha, right. but he hasn't really been, when the green lights go out, he's nowhere to really talk about. He's nowhere to be seen. And I'm like you, I'm a fan of the guy. So I keep on thinking, oh, it's coming now. He's ready to go. And he just never really marches forward. It seems like he's incredible when he gets the lead by himself and he can run off and do his thing, but he never, maybe we'll see that change. I think, Greg, one thing that was really interesting watching the race too is the onboard, the helicopter view when they were coming onto that back straightaway. The Ducati itself, we know how fast it is. We know all that stuff, but when that Yamaha got up into 5th and 6th gears, it didn't seem like the Ducati had as big of advantage as it did when it was shifting through the higher ends of 3rd and 4th. That's where it really seemed like it would jump on the Yamaha even more. And so some of that goes through, again, that the Yamaha has been talking about the lack of acceleration and edge grip on the bike. But even on the onboards with Dovi, there was times where I thought, oh, he's going to go flying by Rossi, and he would kind of close up on him really quick and then just not really be able to have the legs to get up alongside of him before he got to the braking zone. I think the problem with Coda for the Yamaha is the acceleration. I think it just struggles so much out of all those slow turns.
Yeah,
So,
and Rossi did
right?
say that COTA is the most technical place that they go to in the entire circuit as well, which suits the Honda. But the other thing too, that was interesting watching the onboards as long as I did, is that when I kind of turned it on, say with 10 laps to go, you heard a lot because it was on Dovey's bike looking back most of the time. You could tell when they went to them on TV because they would adjust the camera around, but you would hear wheel spin on the Ducati. What? Trying to find
Mm-hmm.
traction. But
Yeah.
those last like 3 or 4 laps, he must have changed the map because you just didn't hear it anymore. And I think Dovizioso made a comment that they were a bit struggling, or they were struggling a little bit with grip towards the end of the race. And I think that whatever the Yamaha found for the moment is good, but at the end of the day, the Yamaha looks pedestrian when you get on the throttle to top speed at this point. The Honda
Yeah.
and here now, switching gears off of Yamaha, the other thing I want to mention too is the disaster that Andrea Iannone had, Jason. I mean, he qualified last, 22nd on the grid, and finished 17th. I mean, what is up with that?
I got him in my notes, and the two guys I have in my notes, really, it's pretty funny that you said this, is, I've got Zarco and Iannone together. I mean, Zarco finished second last year in this Grand Prix, with Tech 3 on what is a satellite Yamaha, and now he's on the factory KTM. And I'm not going to lie, I really did believe that somehow they would turn this program around with 4 riders and this and that. But Zarco's back there, barely beaten Hafiz Siren, who is just 2 seconds behind him. And then Iannone is a further 3 seconds behind Siren. And what's funny about all this is you look at that kind of, it is a disaster. There's no question it's a disaster. But what an effort from Miguel Oliveira, who finishes 11th, a MotoGP rookie. And he was only 5 seconds behind Quartararo on that Petronas Yamaha, who finished 8th. So Oliveira, I don't know Greg, I think if I had put some money on this, if you'd have told me that Oliveira would be kind of schooling Zarco at the second race of the year on the same equipment, I don't know if I'd have believed it. I don't know if I'd have believed it. So it's, there's some big question marks right now, I think, around that deal with their frame and all that kind of thing with the KTM.
They have a motor. There's no doubt.
The motor is really good. You're exactly right. That's what everybody says. But man, it's like, it seems to me that Paul is always overriding it, which he has to. But he barely beat Oliveira to the line. He beat his teammate to the line by 0.2, which I think really says a lot about Oliveira, the runner-up in Moto2 last year. But there's a couple other guys that kind of surprised me. Bagnaia is a lot further off than I thought he would be. I thought he'd be further up. He gets kind of gifted points in 14th because those other two guys took each other out. I mean, Zarco was out of the points till the last lap of the race when Vinales and Morbidelli did their thing. So there are some shockers with the results. The notable non-finishers other than Vinales and Morbidelli were Mir, Rabat, and Carl Abraham. So, they're going to roll on to COTA. You and I are going to be there. I can't believe that's a week and a half away. We'll be in Texas. I don't know. I could see a Ducati sweep of the podium possibly there. I think Miller's good. When Rossi says it's probably the most technical track that they go to, do you know why I think that is?
Why?
It's got the most slow corners. That's where these guys make the most mistakes. It's so easy to make mistakes in slow turns. Turn 1 there is extremely technical. You come up over the top of the hill there on the brakes, and there's a huge geometry suspension change when you get to the top of that hill to a first gear corner. You got another turn that leads onto the biggest straightaway that guys routinely overshoot or tip off in at the end, before they head down the big back straightaway. And at the end of that, what are they going 200 plus mile an hour down the straight? They got another first gear turn at the end of that. So there's so many places where you can make mistakes. If you got to put the lap together as best you can. But I think COTA has so many slow technical sections that you have to be good at. Breaking from 200 plus mile an hour to first gear, there's a lot going on. And to do that for as many laps as they do, it definitely makes it harder. The S's and stuff like that, they see that all the time. But I don't know if I can think of another track, Greg. Can you, off the top of your head, that has as many first gear turns as COTA?
No, and I know that after the first year, MotoGP bikes changed, because they have the ability to change the gearbox. And so those first gear for us riding street bikes is second gear for MotoGP. But nonetheless, the RPM is up. The throttle's very touchy when you're going through those corners. They have interesting characteristics in terms of like how they close off or how they open up. Yeah, I mean, it's for me personally, I love being at COTA. I love the layout, but in terms of the actual track, having ridden it, myself, I'm like,
No, I'm
it's
with
tough.
you.
And it's very physically demanding. Physically demanding for the GP riders. They leave that race sore. As fit as those guys are, they still leave that place sore. But let's move on, Jason, to Moto2, because Moto2 was, oh man, a spectacular race. And we saw the coming out party of Remy Gardner. So why don't you go ahead and give us the rundown of Moto2 if you have it there? Because I know that you enjoyed that race as much as I did, for sure.
Most of the time, I always say Moto3 is the best race. And I say, because there's just so many people. MotoGP, I just look forward to because I just don't know. We know who's going to be up front, but there's just so much hype around MotoGP. Moto2 to me usually it's okay, but it's usually a bit boring, gets a bit processional. And this week was the exact opposite. This week's Moto2 race was incredible. Lorenzo Baldassarri goes on and wins his second race in a row to start the season off perfect. Remy Gardner, as you say, here's a guy who's been on, I would say not the best equipment. So it goes right back to what we've talked about. And you heard Johnny Rea talk about at the beginning of the podcast. Remy's, he's fought through it. He's paid his dues, if you will. Kept his head up, broke both legs last year in a motocross accident, still came back and almost put it on the podium at the end of last year. Then he goes to Doha, almost puts it on the podium there, and he wasn't going to be denied to finish second. I thought Alex Marquez rode a tremendous race to finish third. At one time, it looked like he was going to be losing some contact with those guys. So for him to finish third on the podium, good day for the Marquez brothers again, with both of them on the podium. Iker Lecuona, a guy that I loved last year. I had him in my pool. He came from, you have to correct me on this, but I think he came from like 18th on the grid, Greg, to finish fourth on the American Racing KTM teammates, obviously with Joe Roberts. Marcel Schroeder, but the pole sitter, finishes fifth. Brad Binder, sixth. Got in a bit of a dust up the last couple laps with Luca Marini, who ends up seventh. A guy who I think a lot of people thought was going to
Brad Binder got in a dust up with a lot of people.
He did. Yeah.
Final couple laps. I love the aggressive riding. Yeah.
Yeah, he was nowhere to be seen at Doha. They had some, I think that the KTM chassis was definitely struggling. So to see Lecuona and Binder both in the top six, 4.7 off was Binder, 2.7 off was Lecuona. So the KTM chassis found something here. Luca Marini, as I said, seventh. Jorge Navarro, eighth. And Ea Bastianini, the first of our real Moto3 rookie guys that came up. And Chantra he finished ninth. And Chantra ends up 10th, another, I believe, rookie to the Moto2 class. You know what watching this race kind of reminded me of is Remy Gardner reminded me of Baldassarri 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Baldassarri had speed, but he had so much aggression and overrode things so much that, hey, it was really fun to watch, but it ended in tears a lot. This week, Baldassarri, did you notice just how patient he was at the beginning? I mean, he just sat there in fourth, Greg, for the first, I don't know how many laps that race. He just sat there in fourth, wasn't really bothered by it. And then when it was his time to go forward, he did it very, very easily, it seemed, to go ahead and pull away by 1.2. But Remy, on the other hand, you know who he reminded me of? Who did Remy Gardner remind you of in that race, Greg?
Who did Remy Gardner remind me of?
One of our boys. One of our boys.
Josh Herron.
Almost. I thought you were going to kill it. But that would be very true too. But Josh Hayes, how much did Josh hate? He hated being second. If he could attack you and get ahead, that's what he wanted to do. And Remy was doing that. And then until Baldassarri went by him, Baldassarri goes underneath him at the end of the back straightaway. Remy didn't want to give it up, and it caused him to run wide. And we heard him in the interview afterwards say, probably should have just given that up a little bit. Might have made it to where he could stay closer. The announcers thought it was a cheeky move, they said. And for me, it was Baldassarri did nothing but do something perfect. Remy just didn't want to give up that spot. So, but
I'm with you on that one, Jason. Years and years ago, when I took my first quote unquote race school, which was the Ed Bargy school at Roebling Road, one of the first things that he said, when you're racing motorcycles, you're responsible for what's in front of you. Meaning, if someone's in front of you and you're going to make a pass, it's your responsibility. We don't have rearview mirrors on these bikes. You can't be responsible. If you look at that pass that Baldassarri made on Gardner, he got up, got a wheel in front of him, and Remy knew it. And by the way, post race, it was great. He said the ultimate Aussie saying, right? He pulled his finger out the last 3 laps. It's one of my favorite Aussie sayings.
Yeah,
right?
I love it.
Yeah, I cracked up. But yeah, and in the end, Remy knew, like, hey, listen, I should have just pulled the lever on a little bit more, given Baldassarri a little bit of room, because he had the angle to the corner. And I don't think it was speed for Remy. I think it was the fact, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, I just don't think that at the moment he wanted to tip the bike into the corner, he could, because Baldassarri was there.
You're exactly right. It looked like he wanted to let off the brakes, and if Lorenzo started to tip in, he wanted to let off the brakes and try to maybe go around the outside. But the problem was that Lorenzo just kind of held his ground and wasn't ready to tip in yet. And so what Remy had to end up having to do was just stand the bike upright, get the bike stopped in a straight line, because he didn't want to be trail braking out over wide in the dirty stuff type of thing, and then run the risk of tipping off. He was so hungry for that podium, and to see the emotion after the race was pretty cool, because all racers are real tough guys, aren't they, Greg? And so
real tough, especially when they're laying in hospitals and all that. Yeah.
You know what that guy's gone through.
Did you see Dakota Momola come up to him?
I did.
Because those are two. You think about it; those are two kids that kind of grew up. Their dads were GP racers right around the same time and everything else, and the emotion there was amazing. And
so cool.
Later on, Dakota posted some stuff up about, all the time they spent together, all the hospitals and all that stuff, and the training and the sacrificing and the diets and all that stuff. And it was nice to see Dakota Momola share in the celebration that Remy Gardner had as well. So
it really was.
I liked it. What about the control, Jason? Late in the race, when even that after the Baldassarri incident, which I'm air quoting, he really tried to close that gap, really. And I just love the bike control, like the confidence that he had on those Dunlop tires. I mean, that bike was just all over the place, like it was skating on top of the asphalt, and he just didn't care. And it was something that I'm just like, man, this kid he kind of reminded me in a way of that famous quote by Kevin Schwantz, which is, I invite my motorcycle to go around the corner, and sometimes it goes with me and sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes sometimes it exits. Yeah.
Sometimes, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's kind of the style that he had in that moment. It was just like, let's go, bike. I got to go try to get this guy. But somewhere in there, he showed enough restraint. But I love the bike that he's on. Obviously, Kalex went 1, 2, 3 in the chassis department. Iker Lecuona, who was in fourth, like you mentioned, was the first of our KTMs, beating the Red Bull KTM team. So, yeah, I love the racing. If you just pulled up the race results and you said, oh, Baldassarri won by 1.2 seconds over Marquez at 1.8, the spread is not the story of this race, and that's the greatest thing about watching it, in my opinion, anyway.
You get to see some amazing bike control. You're exactly right, Greg. And even what Binder was doing on the last couple of laps, he was looking desperate to get himself as many points as he could. So upsetting the apple cart a little bit to get him where he was, but he ended up doing just that. And I think that for him, getting that 6 was so much better than where it was at the last race. And Binder's a guy that I think will win. I would say he's going to probably win 2 or 3, maybe 4, Grand Prix this year. They'll just continue to get that bike better. For Joe Roberts fans, I think Joe crashed kind of about midway through the race. I think he tipped off, Greg, because they showed him getting back on it, and he ended up 22nd. Obviously, picked the bike back up, and it's weird because you see 2 guys on the exact same team, and hopefully Joe can get that thing where he wants it to be. He's coming off of a different chassis that he rode on last year. And so, we'll see where it goes. Also, there's a couple big names that didn't finish. Jorge Martin, Moto3 world champion. He tipped off. Antonio. So I think his bike actually broke, or he had leg cramps. They said Nico Buliga, Simon Corsi, Sam Lowe's tipped off at the exact same time. As I was really shocked to see Thomas Luthi throw it down the road as well. So, and Monzi was a no finisher as well in the MV Augusta. So all in all, pretty good stuff. And when you go to the next one, just throw things into the air, huh, Greg? I mean, when you sit there and you watch this race, I said, the other day when we were talking, I said, I don't even know if I would have had I don't know, do you call it like, I don't even know if I'd have had the brass nuts to race with all these guys the way they do it in this Moto3 class. It's so incredibly close. I mean, if I'd have said to you at the beginning of the race that Fanati's going to qualify 7th and not score a point, like, would you have taken that bet?
No. No. And I don't even understand how there's enough real estate on a racetrack to have 17 racers finish within 2.3 seconds of each other.
It's insane.
2.3. Think about it. Just go through it, people at home. 1,000, 2 1,000. Boop. That's 17 riders packed into that time span.
And when you put it like that, it is truly incredible that, and you look at the guy who won, Jaume Masia goes ahead and wins his first Grand Prix after a disastrous start of the year at Doha, where even in testing, he ends up breaking his collarbone. He comes to Doha, doesn't finish the first race. I would say that he was a top 5 favorite, top 3 favorite for the year, probably after his rookie season last year. Comes here on the Bester Capital Dubai bike and puts it on pole. And there were points in that race where he was back there in 16th, 17th. Like, he was back there. It was like, well, I guess he's not really going to be there. And
Jay, I think he was chipping away. I think he was 5th on the last lap. Like, you kind of thought, wow, insane. With all them. But then he just kind of went boink, boink, boink. The other thing, too, is that Toba, who, is our championship points leader heading into this thing, finishes 1.2 seconds back. 1.2. And only scores 6 points in 10th place.
And he got pushed wide in turn 1 and lost this lead group, then recaught them with about 4 or 5 to go. And I'm talking, what is it? What did we say, Greg? There's 17 guys within 2.3, right? So 7, he ends up catching those guys and at 2.3 seconds back. He ends up catching them and going through what a great points. I mean, 6 points is 6 points. You put it in the bag. That's 10 for 10th place, but he did a good job. But let's talk about, you talked about some bike handling skills. How about Darren Binder in that race? Talk about a guy who uses his size to his advantage on the small bikes, but Darren Binder finishing 2nd. He rode so hard. And here's a guy that got let go by the KTM main team last year because basically he didn't really get the results. And with about 5 races to go, when they were starting to pick the riders that they were going to choose for the season, he was kind of left without anything. But then he went on this incredible run, and he gets picked up by the CIP Green Power team, finishes 2nd on the weekend. You could tell how bad he wanted to win. Tony Arbolino finishes 3rd. Nico Antonelli 4th. Ayamo Sasaki 5th. Gabriel Rodrigo. Lorenzo Dalla Porta, the guy who I think everybody kind of picked to win the championship on the Leopard Racing team, ends up 7th. Dennis Faggio, Marcos Ramirez, and Kaibo Toba finished 10th. But just go back to the guys that were within 3 seconds. 11th is Mino, and then Aaron Canet, who
keep going.
He ended up 2nd on the grid and ends up 12th. Tatsuki Suzuki, you're just loving hearing me talk about all these guys, right? Last names and stuff.
Of course.
Celestino Vietti is 14th, and Raul Fernandez, who, by the way, is a rookie, was running up there as high as 4th, 5th in this race. Coming out of the CV, he's riding for the Angel Nieto team. He ends up 15th, and then you got Fanati, who is 16th, and Ogura, who was 17th. All those guys, all 17 within 2.3.
All right, so this is kind of a stretch, and it's, my thing with the numbers and blah, blah, blah. But in MotoGP, Marc Marquez wins by 9.8 seconds. We all know that he literally Cadillac'd on the last lap. I think the last left-hander, he was actually standing on the foot pegs, taking a corner, which actually was like, oh, look, he's a stunter. So let's just say, for argument's sake, it was 10 seconds. That's the 20th position, 10.1 seconds in Moto3, from 1st to 20th. And in MotoGP, it was 1st to 2nd. And, that time, it was a great race. I mean, it was a great race. If I was calling that race, I would have been done, dead. Because you know what I mean? Trying to call lead changes, or I would have figured it out a few laps in. Like, okay, you just got to call this like golf until the last lap, because it was such an incredible race. Like you're saying, you can't come into Moto3 and be fast. You've got to come into Moto3 and be fast and ready to race. And there's a distinction, Jason. You know it as well as I do. We've known racers, or riders that can do a lap time, but when they get into a race situation, they're not the greatest of racers. And then we know other people that are just straight up racers that may not do the fastest, like say, whatever, outright lap time in qualifying. And you're looking at these 17 and I don't know, 2.3 seconds. Anything falls in a different way. And I think anyone in that top 17 was capable of winning that race. Definitely in the top
no
10,
question.
Or,
yeah.
1.2, right? And that's the thing that's really impresses me about Moto3. And if you're not watching Moto3, you're doing yourself a disservice because it is absolutely spectacular. And I think if you say to us, pick who do you think is going to be the series champion?
Yeah.
I mean, what a task.
It's
how
almost
do you do that?
It's almost impossible. Greg, I just pulled up a pretty cool thing. I'm looking up the fastest laps of the race. So the guys who did the fastest laps, our winner's not even in the top 5. Our winners,
I'm not surprised.
It's insane when you think about like how close the racing is, and and the best part, Greg, we get to watch it live in a week going down Dakota. In the past, you and I have commentated on these races on the MotoGP stuff. This year we got Superbike only for our MotoAmerica Superbike, which I'm really excited about. But it's going to be kind of fun to go out and watch these other races. I'm going to try to go find some cool places to go watch the race and be down there. Hopefully all the fans hopefully the weather will be great. But the fact that we get these guys at round 3, I can hardly wait to get down there.
Before we get to MotoAmerica stuff real quick, I just want your opinion on Moto3 turn 1 at COTA. You got to be holding your breath?
I'm not even going to watch. I'm going to be in the last corner. I'm going to be in the last corner, ducking behind the pit wall there, just hoping to make sure everybody got around. I honestly, the one thing that I think you have to have at a racetrack is you have to have a great first turn 1. You have to be able to get it to where all your competitors can get through it somewhat safe. And historically, there's some racetracks that have horrendous turn 1s. And I could think of the old Monza was horrible. The Nürburgring that we raced World Superbike at, not the old like major Nürburgring, but it was maybe the worst turn 1 I've ever been to. It's a downhill turn that cuts back on itself, first gear turn. You're coming in there from 5th gear, 6th gear.
I was never a fan of Loudon's turn 1. I don't know if that was anything you ever thought of.
Nope, I agree with you. But we're coming off of banking there too, which just makes it even harder with the big dip. So I agree with you on that. There, a good turn 1 is like turn 1 in Atlanta. I love turn 1 in Atlanta because it's kind of it's flowing. It's fast and it's flowing. So everybody gets off the line. There's not going to be anybody really doing any big checkup moves because it's kind of a fast flowing turn 1. So when you look at turn 1 at COTA, the thing I hate about it, if it was anywhere in the lap, it'd be one thing, but it's at the top of a hill, first gear, even on these small bikes, and it's just such an easy way to skittle about 4, 5, 6 of your riders out. I think the first year we went there, Greg, and you and I covered all the classes, I think we had a crash in every single race that we called that weekend, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, I'm gonna have my eyes shut.
All right, let's move on to MotoAmerica real quick, Jason. If you're thinking we're going to talk MotoAmerica in this podcast, we have done a full-blown MotoAmerica podcast leading up to Road Atlanta. We posted that on Monday, so definitely go check that out. But we just wanted to remind everyone that you can see the Superbike race. It's an hour-and-a-half program that'll be live this weekend on Fox Sports 2. There's a show on Saturday, a show on Sunday. I think we start at what time? 2:30, I think, Jason?
I believe so,
East.
Yeah,
live. And then if you haven't yet, you can subscribe to MotoAmerica's Live Plus coverage. You can catch all the races. Coverage is going to start at different times. I think maybe 10 o'clock on Saturday, 11 o'clock on Sunday type of thing, where they're going to have features and interviews and practices and qualifying. And of course, all the races that you're going to be able to see. So make sure if you haven't subscribed yet, go to MotoAmerica.com and there's a tab for Live Plus. It's now that the presale is over as of April 1, it's now $69.99, no big deal. You get the entire season. It's really a smoking deal. And then later on, I can't remember if it's 7 or 10 days, there's going to be kind of a behind-the-scenes thing on NBCSN. So whether you have cable or not, you can find it, whether you're listening to us in the United States or not. You can get it on MotoAmerica Live Plus. That's all I have to say about that, Jason.
Guess who procrastinated?
You.
Guess I'm the worst. I'm so bad, G-Dub. I don't know what it's like. I'd rather get a April Fool's happy birthday tweet out to you than I'm such a dunce. And it's like, I've got to get, so yeah, I'm going to be paying the $69.99 now for the MotoAmerica stuff because
still
of course,
worth it. Still
oh
worth
yeah, I'm going to do it. My mom's, she'll be glued to it. She's going to watch it. My mom's 79 years old and she's always asking about this guy and that guy and all that, she's
into it.
I just blew it. I'm the worst. Anyways, and incidentally, I didn't retire from podcasting.
No, you didn't. That was an April Fool's joke, everyone.
Yeah.
As is the synthetic ankle. I don't even know if there is such a thing yet. I made it up.
That's pretty good. But Greg is 60, so I appreciate everybody telling him how good he looks 60. For 60. You do. You look great for 60.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I hope I look good for 60.
And your fitness is incredible too. Okay, moving on. Moving on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Supercross, Greg, this last weekend. Round 13 to 17, our boy Chad Reed's obviously out, so it's kind of a bummer. The field, when we lose a couple of the guys, it definitely looks a little bit thin. And it's kind of the nature of Supercross, guys getting hurt, and it was such a bummer that we were without Brayton this weekend and we were out without Chad. But man, Cooper Webb rolling along, goes 2-1, 2-1-3 in his 3 motos to win the overall. This was again a Triple Crown race, so it was the 3 races combined. Musquin second, Dean Wilson, tremendous. Love it. I love seeing guys like Dean Wilson get on podium with a 3.25. Never met Dean. I don't know. I'm just kind of a bit of a fan of his, so always have since watching him ride the smaller bikes. Tomac fourth, again, just don't get it. It seems like he should be a lot further up. Cole Seeley fifth, Zach Osborne, Justin Bogle, I think did a great job all night long, was kind of in that top 7, top 8 range. I think he finished 5th. He did finish 5th in one of the races, Greg. Blake Baggett, again, another guy I just don't understand. One weekend, the guys, I just don't get it.
Yeah, mystery.
We don't see this in road racing.
Mm-mm.
Like we don't see, like Tony Elias is not finishing 9th this year. Cameron Bobby is not finishing 9th this year. We're not seeing it.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So guy win, but Blake Baggett ends up 8th. Joey Savacci, again, mystery. Don't understand it. 7, 11, and 8 on his motos. But see, what we don't know, okay, I'll tell you this. And then we had Ken Roczen 10th. We'll get to that in a second. But what we don't know is that some of these guys get sick. Like they get the flu or they get stomach bugs or they get something because their season's so long that, they're going in and out of stadiums. They're going to Minneapolis one week and then they're going down to Houston the next. So it's let's just say, guys get sick. So when I see like a Savacci and a Baggett back there in 8th and 9th, I think they even said something about some of the guys getting the flu on the week. So that could have definitely had something to do with it. Ken Roczen, like everyone's waiting for him to do his thing. I picked him this week in my pool that we'll get to in a minute.
As did I.
And to see the guy run away and win the first race by 9 seconds, I loved it.
I was like, yes. I was like, all right, I got this covered, right?
Yeah, and then to see the poor guy essentially take himself out. It was a bit of a mistake, I think, by him. He got hurt, which I was so bummed to see him get hurt. But I was really, really happy to see him lining back up. Even though he finished 8th in the last round, I was happy that he didn't get too beat up, that he couldn't get back out and ride. And but man, that first race, he just dominated. But Cooper Webb, again, is just too good. He's got the aggression when he needs it. Did you get to watch any of it?
Mm-hmm. The highlights of it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Musquin comes out, I wouldn't say really roughed him up, but made some aggressive passes. He's second in the championship. He doesn't want Webb winning. Webb could have hung out there and just, I think it just pissed him off. I think Webb, if he'd have got past, he probably would have let Musquin just kind of sit in front of him. But Musquin got a little bit chest out type of thing, and Webb wasn't having any of it.
Well, Jason, this is a Webb characteristic from the past, okay? And he really seems to have gotten a lot of emotions in check, but it's part of why I actually enjoyed watching Cooper in the 250 class when I was in the mix of doing outdoor nationals and stuff for 2 seasons. I just like, a lot of people are like, because he will get upset. And he did. And he admitted it after the fact, post-race. He kind of backed off and he said, look, my emotions got the best of me. And that was that pass where there was that left-hander, they got into it, and he kind of touched Marvin on the back tire and then drove him right off the track.
Yeah, basically they were,
and he was just,
they were going over that little sand section and
the sand section,
and just kind of shoved him off. And
that's the thing that's interesting about this dynamic with the Red Bull, KTM team is you have them both down at Alden Baker's place, and they're supposed to be training together and doing all these things together. But when push comes to shove, and Cooper let his emotions get the best of him, but that's Cooper Webb, so the question is, how does Marvin respond? And Marvin wins race 3. So,
but if you watch that race, like, to me, I felt like Marvin got so pissed off that he wanted to get back up to the back of Webb so bad he kept making mistakes rather than just kind of going through the process of getting back up there. He was trying so hard, and what I feel like it did by sitting and watching it was he got so flustered and he threw points away by doing it because he got back up into second in that race, and then he ends up 5th because he crashes just trying to get back up to the back of Webb when that was the first moto of the night. Like, if he finishes second in that race I'm sorry, if he would have finished 3rd, because Roxon was gone, don't forget. So Webb was second, Musquin was running 30, caught back up to the back of Webb within about a second of him going on to the last lap. And then he crashes and lets 2 guys by, finishes 5th. I felt like Musquin lost his cool a little bit more than Webb. And Webb, by the way, somebody's worked with him as far as his interviews. His interviews have gotten a lot better. I don't know if you've noticed that too.
Yeah, I have.
But I feel like Musquin just kind of like, he wanted to get to the back of Cooper so bad in that first moto that he made too many mistakes. I mean, he must have crashed like 5 times in the first 2 motos. I think he was picking himself up off the floor, was Marvin. So
yeah, he just gets hectic with himself. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Or frantic, I guess maybe is a better word to
Rise
use.
with a bit
That's
of
what it seems like.
Yeah.
And it's just mistake after mistake, and just doesn't have the ability to just go, okay, dude, just take a breather. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
1 second, couple corners, just gather yourself. Let's find the rhythm again. Let's get going. I mean, I'm not telling the guy how to ride. I haven't ever raced, or done a race outside of arena cross that I even care to talk about. But you know what I mean? It just seems like that. So
yeah, you need to skim over this whole G-Dub on a motocross bike thing. Just skim right over it, G-Dub.
Skim right over it.
Yeah,
the thing I'm not a fan of though is the Triple Crown. I think I've watched it enough now where I'm just kind of like, I mean, I don't know, something about if you're not good at starting a race, you get beat up 3 times for it. You know what I mean? At least if you have one race and it's a longer distance, you have time to try to make up some positions and get a rhythm and do some things. But I don't know. The start and stopping kind of thing. I'm just kind of like, it's not that I don't like it, but I certainly am not a fan of it. I'm just kind of like, great, Triple Crown. Yay.
You know what? I gotta say I kind of agree with you on this because I just sort of feel that it if it was a 20 lap, well, first off, they take the top 18 guys, I think, in qualifying, get to go to all the main events for the night. So you've kind of got this. I know they start 22, but the thing is that they take a certain amount of qualifiers, and then I think that you're done, and you're gonna have to check that for me, Greg, because I felt like you got this big fraternity of riders that are all going to all the races, and then once you make the main there, you're in all 3 mains. I think that's hard because as a rider, I want to try to get in every weekend. It's great for the fans because they get to see their main guys more, which I do like. I mean, imagine if the first race results were actually the results of the night where, Roxon wins, Webb 2nd, Musquin 3rd, who would have been 4th there? Cole Seeley actually would have been 4th, and Musquin would have been 5th. That would have been your results for the night. I got to agree with you. I like it, but I kind of don't like it. Yeah, it just does kind of shake things up.
It is what it is at this point.
It is. You just got me thinking. You got me thinking.
Yeah,
thinking about it too much probably now. But the one thing I will tell you is I've enjoyed doing our fantasy Supercross this year with the Rocky Mountain ATV Fantasy Supercross. And hold on, just going to give everybody the update here, Greg. Greg, dude, you're 41st.
I know. I slipped. You
slipped. That's a nice way of putting it. The only reason you're even not on the bottom is because we get these new people just joining in that are each week.
Thank you, people joining in.
How did you do this week, Greg? You actually had a good week. How did you? How did? Oh wait, no, hold on. I was just saying for a minute there, I didn't want to
No,
believe.
it wasn't. It wasn't. Because
what? How many points? How many points?
We had very similar picks. If you remember, we had very similar picks. But at the end of the day, it was like it just didn't pan out. And it's so stupid because I sat there looking at it, going, "Man, I just have a feeling Webb. I have a feeling Webb." And I'm looking at the times that they've done and this and that. And I'm like, nope, not Webb. No, it feels like Roxon's night. And I was like, But then I forgot it was a Triple Crown. And as soon as I realized it was a Triple Crown, because I did not get my picks in, I actually hit enter with 37 seconds to go.
Oh my God, you were lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, I squeaked them in. And then I was like, oh, wait a second, it's a Triple Crown. And I went back to change it to Webb because he's just more consistent and it was too late. So no excuses. I have what? That was round 13 of 17. So we have 4 to go, and I'm going to make such a comeback. It's going to be unbelievable. God. It's going to spin your head around.
Have you sent Travis's money yet?
No, it's not till the very end. And it's not going to Travis. It's going to the Road Racing World Action Fund.
I know.
And that's, if you're listening to us for the first time, there's a guy named Travis who signed up as Beat G Dub?
BG Dub. Yeah, you got to go way up to find him. So if you're scrolling
there he is.
up,
he's up to 16th. He's crushing it.
It's crushing you.
422. 422, and I have 289. Dude, all I need is 133-point weekend, and I'm right there.
I cannot believe this. By the way, Travis was behind you for the first 5 rounds. He's excelling. Producer Dan just sucks. But you know what really hurts me is that I got to deal with Alex Fuller now. I had to deal with Cole before, but Cole he's back there now, although he can still catch me, so I can't talk too much crap about him. Corey Alexander jumped up a bunch. I'm not even going to tell you who I got to deal with.
Perspective check, by the way. Perspective check. Our group is ranked 6,201 out of 7,879. So we as a group are not crushing anything at this point.
We're not so good. Alex is what? 2,944?
70,000 plus people. 70,000 plus people in this thing.
I still got a chance, G-Dub. I'm not completely out. I'm 37 points out.
It's like I've registered for a pro archery tournament. This is exactly it. Ooh, 70,000 people and I'm 53,000. Oh, well, it's at least I'm in the top 75%.
So brutal. All right. Let's hope that this next week goes better. Hopefully we remember to do it. We're going to be so busy down. Where's it at this next week, Greg? I can't remember. Is it they go to Utah this week?
No, they're going to Tennessee. Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
Jason.
Yeah.
Are you from Tennessee? You're the only 10 I see. Oh! Pickup line of the century.
Painful. Can we do this quick shift, please? Hello, please.
Okay, Jay, it's time for the quick shift segment, which means it's time for the ARAI read. For 3 generations, ARAI has been making some of the world's best helmets. And of course, ARAI helmets meet all safety standards, but they also pride themselves in a blend of engineering tech and human craftsmanship that makes an ARAI helmet fit better and feel better, which also protects you better. Your head is worth the best. Go visit ARAIAmericas.com, ARAIAmericas.com. Tell them that Jason and Greg sent you. For more information on tech, fit, and paint jobs, ARAIAmericas.com, because you owe it to you. This is the segment where we're going to rattle off some stuff pretty quickly, and then when we're kind of done in the neighborhood, you're going to hear that. All right, Jason, so we'll kick things off. Video of Cal Crutchlow's jump start, which we touched on in the MotoGP thing. It violates the rules, I guess. What do you think about Cal Crutchlow's jump start?
We only got 60 seconds. That's it. We're gonna need an hour for this. Listen,
we'll touch on it later.
We need to start being human beings again and really make positive judgment calls on things. By the rule, his wheel it did. Without question, it moved a centimeter or 3. There was no advantage gains. He wasn't out of the box. There was to think that a team travels all the way to Argentina and a guy moving a MotoGP bike 3 centimeters, but basically could be from switching legs one side to the other or whatever. The clutch was still in. Did that alter the outcome of the race if they would not have brought him in? Was there another team that would have complained about Cal Crutchlow jumping the start? I say no. Nobody would have even cared. Nobody would have even looked at it. Could we just like be smart about things? I don't understand it. And now you've got this penalty loop. The thing I really don't understand, Greg, is if we got this, you could utilize it that way. But the thing that really drives me the most crazy about their whole rule of making a guy do a ride through on something as innocent and as lame as that was, nobody on the grid's trying to do it, is trying to jump a start. But the thing that drives me nuts is, Greg, if you jump start at that track and I jump start at another, and your pit lane is 3/4 longer than my pit lane, by definition, I have an advantage over you. Okay. So we're getting penalized for the exact same thing, but we're not really getting penalized for the same thing, because you can't do it that way. Make it a 2-second violation or a riding loop violation or something. What do you say?
I agree with you 100%. Plus, from
As you should.
a fan as a fan standpoint, you took him. You took a fan favorite who won there last year out of the loop. You took him out of the race, and it's like, what are you going to do? You know, I just think, not really a big fan. I get it. I saw the rule. I saw the movement. Yes. Okay, fine. That's the interpretation. We can't go back and change it, but it needs to be looked at and say, okay, enough's enough. There was no competitive.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I'll leave you with this on that. Last year, Marc Marquez rode backwards on the grid. He pushed his bike backwards. Like, we went through this before about how insane that was, okay? He pushed his bike backwards on the grid. He got the same penalty as Cal moving 3 centimeters on the grid. You have to have some form of common sense when this happens. And I know Freddie Spencer's taking a beating on this, but I have to say that I'm on Cal's side on this, even though by rule, the bike moved slightly. It would be really interesting to look at every bike on that grid and have that same camera view. It'd be interesting to see. Okay, moving on. On the 23rd anniversary of his MotoGP GP debut, Valentino Rossi breaks his longest podium drought of his career, his 233rd podium, Greg. What do you got to say about that?
I mean, dude, for real, 24 years of podium appearances. In 24 seasons, he's never had, he's never been off the podium. He's at least had one. Valentino, I mean, I've seen racers, plenty of them. I've seen him get hot for a couple of years. I've seen him fall off, and then their careers are over. I don't know how this dude does it. I know in the post-race press conference, he talked about there's a moment in your career where you say, I'm happy, and you spend the rest of your life staring at your trophies, or you say, I still love what I'm doing, and I'm continuing on. And that's obviously the path that he chose. And the fact that he is still as fast as he is at his age with all the different bikes that he's ridden, I mean, forget 125s, 250s. I'm just talking about in the premier class, MotoGP, right? He's got what? 500,000,
insane,
990, 800, electronics, no electronics, yada, 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 different tires. The dude is just a stud. End of story.
Yeah.
End of story.
You said it, though, a couple of weeks ago. He's the GOAT. There's no question. And I'm going to, you're not going to believe this, I'm going to do the cardinal sin of everything we talk about. I'm going to backtrack.
Go for it.
You know what I'm going to say?
What?
Valentino Rossi is going to win a race this year. I said at the beginning of the year, he was not. But, man, I think he will. I got to bet against my boy Tyler that Alex Rins is going to win before Rossi this year.
And by the way, I switched to Rossi's onboard camera after a post race, and he was riding wheelies everywhere, and he mentioned it. It wasn't just the 11 race drought that that he hadn't been on the podium. It was the fact of the way the season ended. He was in the lead and second place and made mistakes and crashed out of both of those, and the fact that he feels like he's back. I've never experienced that kind of joy before, but I just can imagine. I mean, Valley was he looked like a child again, like a kid at play.
It was so cool. But the thing was, he had to battle. He was in a battle with guys. Yeah, Marquez was 10, 12, 15, I don't know, an hour up the road. But Rossi,
he was already in Austin.
But Rossi I think he was just really stoked that he was in that battle with Dovey. And did you see the corner worker that got to hold up his bike and took a selfie on the bike?
Did you see that? Heck yeah, man. Yeah, that was great. That was so good.
G-Dub, you know what you should do, honestly?
Shut up.
Put an orange bib on and get out to a corner at Coda. Maybe you could hold his bike.
You're dumb. All right.
Thank you.
A quick Kyle Wyman update. The MotoAmerica Superbike Racers Ducati VR4 is raceable. The tank is done. The bodywork is on. And he even got a little shakedown test, I think today or yesterday. Jason, will he win Road Atlanta?
VR4 or V4R, G-Dub?
V4R. Oh, my God.
I'm just going to help you with that because
Yeah.
you're going to get all the haters just jumping on you. I think he rode it Monday at Indy. I texted him a little bit, and I love Kyle, man. It's like there's 2 or 3 of them. He's doing these Instagram posts, and he's working on bikes, and he's traveling, and he's flying. He's doing the Daytona 200, and by the way,
he's
winning
got the
that
new Army, the new Kyle Army thing he announced, where you get T-shirts and you get lanyards, and yeah.
Dude's all about it. It's crazy. It's great.
So
will he
win?
win?
Answer the question. Yeah, go ahead.
No, will he win? No, he won't win.
No, but
you wanted me to answer it. Kyle knows I love him. He knows, but if he does, I'll be the first guy there to say, where are we going? I'm taking you somewhere, dinner, whatever. He wouldn't want to go with me. He's got Hannah, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I'd be the first guy there. Where do you want to go, Kyle? Anywhere you want. You pick the place, best steakhouse in the world, because he's worked hard enough to deserve to win the first race. I could tell you that. And if it rains, rains, never know.
He could. Okay, so what is a win? What is a win for Kyle, Jason? What's a position that he, you know what I mean?
You're going to be surprised at my answer on this. A win for Kyle is to make it through both races with the bike still intact and get as much data as he possibly can and do the best he can as a rider to take what he can get from the weekend, because these first two rounds are very, very easy to get over anxious, especially with the hype of this bike worldwide right now. What I would love to see Kyle do is just do the best job that he can of bringing this bike home in 2 races, because there will be attrition in these races this year. You got too many guys battling at the front. If Kyle can stay out and keep running, and he will be part of these battles as the year goes out, but I think for the first 2 rounds, he would do really well. I think if you told him you're going to get 4 solid, let's say top 8 finishes starting the beginning of this season, I think he'd take them right now.
Yeah, agreed. All right, that's it for that quick shift segment presented by ARAI. Now here's our race calendar, because Jason and I would love to see you get out and watch some races. You can come see us at Road Atlanta this weekend in Braselton, Georgia, as we kick off MotoAmerica. Supercross is in Nashville, Tennessee. NHRA Pro Stock is in Las Vegas. AMA Supermoto is in Primm, Nevada, just outside. AMA East Hare Scrambles in Millville, New Jersey. Full Gas Sprint Enduro in Greenville, Tennessee. And so much more going on. So get out and watch races, because racers love to see fans out there. Heck, if you're a street rider, ride your motorcycle. We'd like to thank Competition Werkes for sponsoring this one. That's Competition, WEREKS.com. Check them out. We really appreciate it. And next week, of course, Jason, we'll be talking about Atlanta. We're going to be talking about what's coming up at COTA. We'll be talking about what happened in Aragon and World Superbike. All kinds of great stuff, including Supercross Nashville. We got a big one next week, don't we?
Man, we got a lot, because don't forget, we got World Supersport. I think we got the opening round of World 300 Supersport. So we're going to get to see Anna Carrasco with that #1 plate on her bike. So, man, we got a lot to go on. And you and I we're going to meet up in Dallas and drive down to COTA together Thursday night, which means I'm probably going to be doing this podcast from a hotel room somewhere in Dallas on Tuesday. So got to stay true to everybody, and thank everybody for listening. And this was a fun episode for me, and man, I'm so happy to get the race season started, Craig, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple days.
Me too. Thanks, Jonathan Rea, for taking all the time, and we hope to have him on again. So Jason, take us out.
Hope to see everybody at Atlanta. Please come up and say hi to us, and we'll see you guys for the next 2 weeks. We'll be on the road, and looking forward to seeing a lot of people at these races.